Hi, it's Annette Bau, and welcome to the Millionaire Insider. For over 30 years, I've been advising and researching the top 1% and 2% of millionaires to learn what they do differently in their business, life, and with their money. And now I'm sharing it with you so that you can win in your business, life, and money. And today I'm super excited because I'm going to share with you something that I have literally been researching for over 3 decades, and it's your Worth Barometer, a combination of your beliefs and your self-esteem. And the one thing that I have found in all of my research is that it is the #1 indicator of your success, or lack thereof. So please stay tuned. Please not only watch, but apply, which brings me to my first point. Please subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and then please engage. People that engage get the Millionaire Insider mug. I want you to engage because I want you to get results. And I know if you apply this material, you're going to get results. I've been testing these strategies in a performance mastermind now for over a decade. And the people that implement what I teach get results. And you can too. So please engage, especially on this one today. Today's training is brought to you by Mindset Mastery. You can go to millionaireseries.com/mindset. If you want to succeed in your business, in your life, or with your money, it starts with your mindset. In fact, if I would have known that 30, 40 years ago, I can't even imagine where I'd be today. It is so critical. It's virtually impossible to achieve your goals if you don't master your mindset. So again, millionaireseries.com/mindset. And we do have our normal disclosure that I have to provide. All materials and intellectual property are copywritten by the millionaireseries.com. The information we provide is not intended to replace investment, financial, tax, retirement, or any other advice, including healthcare advice. Before beginning a plan, you agree to consult with your own team of advisors and to review your situation. All participants agree to hold millionaireseries.com and its affiliates harmless where results achieved or not achieved, and all international copyrights are reserved. So let's dive in, my friends. For today's show notes and resources, go to millionaireseries.com/105. And for all show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/MI. You can just scroll down and see all of them there. So I have a special guide for you that we've created. If you go to millionaireseries.com/WBG, you can get your Worth Barometer guide. And the Worth Barometer guide provides you a lot of detail and insight on elevating your Worth Barometer. That's our goal. Each and every day, the #1 goal, what I want you to do is to work on elevating your Worth Barometer. You will be so glad you did, because this is what happens. So you can have money, but if you want to have money and an amazing life, you've got to have a healthy Worth Barometer. And if we go through this training and you're like, well, I didn't for the first 38 years of my life because I didn't even know there was one. So we can't hold ourselves responsible for not showing up how we need to if we don't even know the facts. After today, you're gonna, and what you're gonna find, you're gonna have a lot better, happier, more productive life by elevating your Worth Barometer than probably anything else you can do. And then what's awesome is that you're showing up, you're doing the things you need to do so that then you can achieve the results you desire. So let's start by looking at the history of the Worth Barometer. Early in my career, it became very clear to me that we're only using part of our brains, and that there were 2 camps of millionaires, those with amazing lives and those who struggled with their health, their relationships, and even their money. They'd be up and then they'd be down. And I became fascinated and intrigued, determining the difference. It took me years of advising and researching the top 1% and 2% to really discover the Worth Barometer and the power it has over every aspect of our life. So what is your Worth Barometer? Well, basically, it's a combination of your beliefs and your self-esteem. And as I mentioned, it's the biggest determinant of your success. It's the key to a financially free life you love. And some of the things that you can do to help elevate your Worth Barometer is quieting down your mind, especially your limbic brain, that one that's fight or flight, that's there to protect you, so that you can really be achieving the results you want and that you desire. So an interesting thing happened to me. I'm going to share a story with you. So when I began my career, I was hired by one of the largest financial service firms in the country. And I was promised that after I went through their training, I could be my own agent. And what that meant is I would have no guarantee on the downside, but I'd have an unlimited upside potential. And I was so excited. I knew this was my ticket out of the blue collar family I grew up in. And even though there's nothing wrong with being blue collar, more the mentality I grew up with, and the fact that you can have money and be a nice person. You can have money and have an amazing life. All the things that I grew up wanting to believe and I saw other people living, but I wasn't really taught. And so fast forward 6 months after going through the training, and you have to understand, I was just graduating from college, and my manager said, I need to talk with you. And you know that feeling you get in your stomach, you're like, oh my God, this is not good news. And he said, Annette, you're young, you're attractive, and you're a female. And I can remember thinking, like, what's changed in 6 months? Like, if that's your perspective of me now, not much has changed. He goes, I can't let you be your own agent. You don't have what it takes. You'll never make it. Now, oh my God, I can't even begin to tell you. Like, somebody could have stabbed a dagger in my heart and I wouldn't have felt any worse. He goes, but you know, you're bright and you're driven, so you get to work with Tim. Well, Tim had an even lower opinion of women. And after working for him for a couple of days, I said, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to stay in this environment. And so I left. And I remember him saying to me, you know, you're never going to make it. This is the biggest mistake of your life. And what I can say is this much. I would love to tell you that I rose so far above it and that I was like, oh, I just was so on top of it. That's a lie. I was so angry. I plotted and I planned what I was going to say, what I was going to share with them once I was successful. Now, my dream was just like maybe someday I'd become a millionaire. I never dreamed the success I'd have. But I spent so much time and energy on that. And one day, thank the Lord above, divine intervention, whatever you want to believe, I woke up and I said, you know, I am spending so much energy on this. It is just toxic. What if I took that same energy and I started really serving my clients and I started just really focusing on what I could control and what I could do? I'm going to be happier and my business is probably going to do better and my clients are going to do better. And so 3 to 4 years after that event, that's what I did. Fast forward 3 years, one of the biggest deals I closed early in my career, just under $1 million in my pocket. That manager who said, you don't have what it takes, you'll never make it, had been trying to close it for over a decade. So this is one thing I want you to get. Very, very important, very powerful. The first thing is, you'll never make it. The only person that gets to decide if you make it is you. The only person that gets to decide if I make it is me. Not our spouse, not our boss, not anyone else, only us. You don't have what it takes. Clearly, I didn't have what it took. And if I would have had the brain at the time or the fortitude or the mindset, I would have said, you're right. That's why I'm here. The reason you're here watching this is because you may not know all the information. You're learning from me. Just like I learn from people, we all learn from people because we don't yet know all the information. That's how the world works. But I didn't get that. And I am convinced that had I not elevated my Worth Barometer, and I still wasn't at the capacity I hoped or feel I am today, and believe me, I struggle too. This is not something that, you don't have to continue practicing or working on. But I am so thankful I got that. Not only because I am convinced I would have never closed that first major deal, but all the clients that I've been able to serve since then and all the lives I've been able to impact because of that experience and because of the success I've achieved. So that is how powerful the Worth Barometer is. So let's dive into a little more insight. So why is your Worth Barometer so important? As I mentioned, it's the #1 indicator of your success, and it's going to dictate everything about your life. Now, even though there are people that have a low Worth Barometer that have money, you'll never see somebody with wealth and peace of mind and happiness and joy if they don't have a healthy Worth Barometer. And what you oftentimes see with a person that has a low Worth Barometer is they have money and then they don't. They're on this roller coaster, wealth and bankruptcy, wealth and bankruptcy. And you can't be wealthy, healthy, and happy if you're living below the grid. Now, So as I mentioned, I lived below the grid for many years of my life, and there are still things that send me below the grid. The good news is because I'm so aware of it and so conscious about it, I know exactly what triggers me. Most things, kids, husband are in that category. And I have learned how to deal with them so that I can look and show up above the grid. And what I find is we get challenged. You're going to continue getting challenged. But as you become more aware of it and as you start to have fun with it, like when I get triggered, I just kind of look at myself in a third eye and go, really, that's so fascinating that triggered you. But the reason I want to bring that up is sometimes the grid triggers people. We're going to be diving deep into the grid in a future episode. I wanted to wait until we had a little bit of a relationship before I dove into it because it can trigger people. And especially if you feel like you're living below the grid. But this is what I want to share with you. Don't beat yourself up. Don't get frustrated. Just understand that if you're living below the grid and you didn't even understand there was a grid, you can't blame yourself. So just be aware of it. Have fun with it. The goal is that you create whatever life you want, a financially free life you love. And if you want to create a business, great. If you want to create side income, great. But that whatever you're doing, you love it, you're happy, and you're reaching your potential. You're doing everything using, as I like to say, your God-given talents. So let's dive into the grid. One of the most common questions I'd get is like, where am I on the grid? And so this is just an indicator, but above the grid, a level 3, the primary emotions are love, peace, joy, calmness, inspiration. They show up from an emotional state that is optimistic and positive. They're understanding. They're not judgmental. They focus on a win-win. They're accepting. They have empathy, but they're very clear on their boundaries. They take responsibility and ownership. They're focused on their vision. They'll do the work they need to do to get the results. They have a can-do, will-do attitude. They live in a drama-free zone. They attract ideal clients, and they're very inspired and motivated to do what they need to do to get the results they want. And then at the grid, which we refer to as a level 2, they understand this, but conceptually, they either rationalize it or justify it. And at a level 2, it can be very challenging because knowing this and not applying it generally does not produce the results a person wants. The interesting thing about the grid that I want you to get is that people that are at level 3 above the grid have the same problems and challenges, maybe different problems, but people above the grid, level 3, have challenges and problems just like people below the grid. The difference is people above the grid are focused on the solution. People below the grid are focused on the problem. So the emotional state at the grid vacillates. It's up and down. It's not consistent. And then below the grid, a level 1, their primary emotion is fear, worry, anxiety, jealousy, depression, agitation. I'm right, you're wrong. Their emotional state is pessimistic and negative. So they're either a victim, lose, win, or a bully, a win, lose. Judgmental, they have an extreme need to be right. They blame, they lack responsibility. They don't take ownership in anything they do. They live in a drama zone. There's always drama and chaos around them. They get easily distracted. They make excuses. They don't do the work, and then they blame someone else. The problem is always out there. They're always in search of that silver bullet. And it wreaks havoc in their business, their life, and with their money. The focus, as I mentioned, with the level 1 is always on the problem. Their energy is low. They're just not fun to be around. So if you find that you have a client or a friend or somebody below the grid, again, you can't hold them responsible if they don't know there is a grid. But this is really important because a lot of times people say, well, I'm married to a level 1. And this is what I say. I'm not here promoting a divorce. But what I will say is as you start showing up more as a level 3, they're forced to show up differently. You don't have to engage. They can be below the grid. They can do things you don't have to be. Now, that being said, if you're around somebody who's really below the grid and you don't have to be around them, but maybe they're your friend or a family member, you can have a conversation with them. You can let them know that you're working to live above the grid and to improve or elevate your Worth Barometer, and you really want support from people around you. One of the things you're no longer going to do or you're going to work on not doing is gossiping or saying I'm right, they're wrong, or things like that. And so I would love it if we could support each other on that. Now, if you find that they're doing it, saying, oh, that feels like I'm going below the grid, help me, and you make fun of the situation, lighten it up. If you find that they're not capable of doing that or they don't want to, because some people, their life is basically one problem after another. And then what you have to do is you just have to rise above it. It's not that you have to completely alienate them, but what you can do is just start spending less time with them and more time with people that are above the grid. Now, I taught a class at a church on integrating wealth and spirituality. And it was so funny. One of the women that went through the class, and then she went through another one of my courses, she came back and she said, every day I look up to the heavens and I say, thank you, God, for voicemail. And I go, what do you mean? She goes, before I take any call, I look, and if it's a level 1, then I let it go to voicemail. If it's a level 3, I'll answer it. She goes, but what I've also done is that if I have to deal with somebody, say it's in my business that I have to deal with that's a level 1, I get myself very grounded, very focused before I engage with them. And what I have found is by doing that when I'm on the call, it shifts the energy. And all of a sudden, we're operating at a level 3, and the person is not showing up how they normally do it. So again, have fun with it. It's not a right or a wrong. It's just a matter of being able to be really clear on where you are, your energy, what you're vibrating at, and then doing your best so that if you want to be dialed into 100.7, where all ideal clients live, all ideal friends live, people that are above the grid live, versus say 98.9, you've got to be the first person to do it, and you got to show up, and it makes it a lot easier for everyone else to then show up that way too. So raising your vibration, where you focus your energy expands. And so you've got to choose thoughts, emotions, words, and actions extremely carefully. And what I do is if I feel myself going below the grid or getting triggered, I just stop. And I do my focused breathing in to the count of 8, holding it for 8, and then releasing for 12. Into the count of 8, hold it for 8, release for 12. And you should just feel your energy. You get much more calm. You go from a beta brainwave to more of an alpha one. You're very present, but you're very calm, very powerful, very important. So the next thing you've got to do is you've got to identify and remove triggers, responses, and backtracks. So determine when you're at your best. How much sleep do you need? What do you need to be eating? Exercise, company, everything. You've got to know when you're at your best. And then you've got to determine when you're at your worst. This is very important because it provides insight to the gap between operating at peak performance versus operating at average or low performance. It's not what happens to you, my friend. It's how we choose to respond that matters and dictates where you show up on the grid. And this is what I have found very powerful. An event occurs, we can either push on the gas and accelerate it, or we can push the pause button. I like to say, let's just slow it down. We don't have to respond to everything. And if we're going to respond in a charge positive, especially if it's backed by anger or frustration or an emotion that's below the grid, it's never ideal. What triggers and sends you below the grid? News. I mean, all you have to do is watch news and you feel completely depressed, right? Politics, negative people, got to become aware of it, and then you've got to avoid or eliminate it. Now, as far as news, yeah, I think you've got to be getting fed some information, but if you're watching a lot of news or you're getting into that mindset of I'm right, you're wrong, and it's very divisive, that's just so below the grid. And the problem is it's very unlikely you're achieving your goals. I mean, I have done massive amounts of research of this, and people who are very much, I'm right, you're wrong, this is how it is, and have an inability to see the world through anyone else's lens are never achieving their desired goals. That's the biggest challenge. And they don't have that happiness, that joy, that peace of mind. And then determine your responses to triggers. What do? Do you yell, blame, drink, avoid work, spend money, get quiet? I can be guilty of, if I get really mad at my husband, I get really quiet. And it's okay to get quiet for a while, to push the pause button and recalibrate, but sometimes I stay quiet a little bit longer. And that's like, really? That's pretty below the grid. And I teach this stuff, so just be easy on yourself. Identify backtracks. And this is really important that you do it before you get triggered. What you want to do is you can identify them when you're getting triggered, but just make a note of it. It's very hard when you're being triggered to be able to know what you're going to do. If you can plan it ahead of time and get really clear on it, and then start forming a new neural pathway, a new habit so you show up differently, that's very important. How can you get quiet, like in a good way, where you can just go within and say, why is this triggering me? What do I need right now? What can I do to calm the situation down, to not enter into the drama? Is there someone you can call that can remind you of the steps you need to take? That can be really powerful. What can you read, watch, or listen to that'll get you back into a level 3 state? So these are great questions to ask, and they're especially important to identify when you're not triggered and your brain's limbic brain is not going into that fight or flight, that fear, that protection, and then just start practicing it. It takes 66 days to change a habit, on average, 18 to 254 days. So you just got to be aware that it could take you a little bit of time, but the more you practice and the more you create a new neural pathway over your old one, because your old one will always be there, the more you're going to see this becomes the norm and you show up how you want to. All right, how do you elevate your Worth Barometer? So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to create a solid foundation. You've got to get adequate sleep. This is like 7 to 8.5 hours a night. Slow down. You've got to quiet your mind and recharge it so you can focus. Eat a clean diet. Exercise your mind and body. Identify and improve triggers, responses, and backtracks. Reduce stress and increase reserves. And then determine what brings you joy and make it a priority. All right, so let's dive into these. So get adequate sleep, 7 to 8.5 hours per night. Now, you have to understand, my friends, if you're going to bed at 10 and getting up at 6, you have to deduct about an hour to an hour and a half, because that's the amount of time you're awake. So you want to be getting to bed ideally between 9 and 9:30, and then 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed, avoid mental stimulation, anything that's going to stimulate your nervous system. No TV, especially no news, phone, computer, anything that's going to get you into a beta state where your brain waves are really alert and you can get really agitated. If you're getting less than 6 hours of sleep, this increases your risk of diabetes, heart issues, obesity, cancer, onset of Alzheimer's disease. I mean, the laundry list is frightening. In fact, one study showed that if you don't get enough sleep and you're predisposed to, say, getting Alzheimer's at like 70, you can actually get it 22 years earlier. It's crazy. I like to get you to the point where you're waking up without an alarm clock so that you know you're getting enough sleep. And if you go to bed at 10 and the alarm clock's going off at, say, 6:30 or 7, then try going to bed at 9. You ideally want to wake up before your alarm clock. So powerful, so important. And then the only time you really set it is if you have a flight to catch or a really important meeting. Slow down and recharge. This is so important, and it begins with our thoughts, and then our words, and then our actions, and then our results. It requires that we become and remain present, conscious, focused, and accountable. Just continue to monitor and refocus on what do you want. Get clear on what you want. But focused breathing can be really powerful to help you slow down. Once you know when you're at your best and you know what you need to do to get back on track, it makes it a lot easier. We break down the strategies to quiet down your brain with primary and secondary. So an example of a primary strategy would be focused breathing or silent meditation. Now, a lot of people think, well, I'm not a Buddhist monk, so I can't do silent meditation. It's really hard. I mean, it's a practice that I've been practicing for literally a long time, 30 plus years, and I still don't have it mastered. So just start with focused breathing. Breathing in to the count of 8 through your nose, hold it for 8, and then release for 12, all through your nose. That's very powerful. Now, this is what happens, is if you don't do primary strategies before you do secondary strategies, it's kind of like having a cup. I've got a cup of tea, and if I just kept pouring it in, what's going to happen? It's just going to fill overflow, right? We're not going to be able to get it all in there. It's the same thing with our mind. We've got to have our mind calm and quiet before we pray, before we do a guided meditation, before we do our chant or our yoga or any other practice. That's why primary strategies are so powerful, is because they allow us to calm down, quiet down, so we can let the other stuff in. Very powerful, very important. So examples of secondary strategies: prayer, gratitude prayer, journaling, guided meditation, chants, yoga, silent walks. What I encourage you to do also when it comes to slowing down and recharging is don't commit until you're really clear on what you want. Take the time to create your plan before you act. Don't use having the excuse of, oh, I don't have a plan. Take the time to create one. And then reduce stress and pressure. And then you want to increase reserves of money, time, space, so that you don't feel that pressure or nervous energy. Just start looking at the different strategies and then determining what works best for you. Okay, the next step we're going to look at is eating a clean diet. So the first thing we want to do is we want to be drinking 50% of our body weight in ounces of water each day. Now, there's not been as much research on drinking water as there has been, say, on sleep. But what I find in running a very successful performance mastermind and testing it is that when you're drinking more water, you're drinking less items that aren't as good for you, especially caffeine or drinks, sugar drinks, or anything like that, even if they have fake sugar in them. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that you want to be really well hydrated. It removes the toxins. It cleans you out. It helps you if you have a tendency towards constipation. It's really helpful. Now, if you do cardiovascular exercise or you live somewhere that's very hot, you may need to drink even a little bit more of that. But an example would be if you weigh 150 pounds, you're drinking 75 ounces of water each day. Then you want to also eat lean protein, non-starchy organic vegetables, healthy fat such as avocado, olive oil, coconut oil, complex carbohydrates. And you want to limit coffee. Now, the one thing about coffee that's concerning to me in all of my research isn't the caffeine, it's the toxicity of the coffee. If you have any health issues, eliminate coffee and see how you do. Some of those studies are absolutely fascinating. You want to either limit or reduce alcohol, sugar, fruit juice. Fruit juice. You drink a glass of orange juice, it's like giving your blood sugar a glycemic load that could literally probably give you a heart attack. Gluten, flour, soy, especially like soy protein or soy isolate, where they separate it. I read a couple of studies on this. It's unbelievable. It's when they split soy out, and a lot of people believe it's very bad for you. What I find is that by not eating gluten or flour, I'm a lot clearer mentally. And I, again, read this in research, and I'm like, oh, I don't believe that. I do. I find it to be true. I also find that I have a lot more stomach problems when I eat gluten than when I don't. It's fascinating. So you got to check with your own healthcare providers and also just test it and see how you feel. Fermented soy, though, a lot of the research I've found on that is the fact that that can be really good for you. You then want to exercise your mind and your body. For example, maybe you begin your day with focused breathing followed by restorative yin yoga. So I start my day with focused breathing. I then have my gratitude prayer. I then do my chant, and I do my chant while I'm doing my restorative yin yoga. I then do Kundalini yoga. I used to do Kundalini yoga all the time, and I loved it. And then I just stopped. It's hard. It is so hard. But gosh, like today I didn't do it. And I can tell I don't feel as good as I normally do. It's unbelievable how clear you're going to get as you elevate your Worth Barometer and you really start showing up and doing the work. It's unbelievable. But you want to ease into your day. I also encourage you to consider exercising first thing in the morning. They find that if you exercise first thing in the morning, you're 95% more likely to succeed at exercising. I find that after I start my day, I go for a walk run with my dog and sometimes with my husband, and it's just such a great way to start my day, just easing into it. You want to ideally combine cardiovascular exercise, stretching, and weight training. And the goal, as I mentioned, is to wake up without an alarm clock. The next thing you want to do is identify and remove triggers, responses, and backtrack. So we talked about this, but you got to get clear on when you're at your best and when you're at your worst, and pushing that pause button. And then we got to reduce stress. You know, our limbic brain was designed to protect us. So if a lion is coming at us, going to eat us, we should jump into protection mode. What can we do? How can we do it? But we've become beings where we just get stressed out over like anything. And then we add to it. We watch things or do things that just add more stress. Stress was designed to trigger a response to danger. The problem with chronic stress is that it produces elevated cortisol levels, and it creates an inflammatory environment where disease thrives. Cortisol is a hormone that's produced from cholesterol in the adrenal glands that are located above the kidneys. Excess levels of cortisol can produce severe fatigue, depression, irritability, emotional reactions, cognitive difficulties, headaches, high blood pressure, bone loss, muscle weakness. It's amazing. Again, check with your own healthcare provider, but a lot of healthcare providers, if you are under stress, they will recommend that you do some type of treatment for adrenals. Very important to understand, especially if you are in a stressful situation. As you learn how to do your focused breathing, your meditation, you learn how to calm your mind, you're going to automatically reduce your stress and be able to elevate your Worth Barometer. So powerful, so important. Increase reserves. So reserves are more than we need. So I learned this early on from a coach, and it was one of the most powerful things I learned. It's like, instead of having how much money you need, have some extra money. Instead of having just amount of time, work in your day so that if you know you have all these things you need to get done, you give yourself a half-hour buffer so you have extra time. So if something takes a little longer, you're not going, oh my gosh, now I'm missing dinner with my family. But reserves are really powerful. And you can have reserves in time, in space, in flow, in money, relationships, health, everything. So just take an inventory, a category of your life, and look at that. It's so powerful, so important. When you increase your reserves, you're going to reduce the nervous tension and that pressured feeling that comes from stress. So again, if you want the Worth Barometer guide, go to millionaireseries.com/WBG. And again, my friends, please hit subscribe. I want to continue providing this content to you free of charge, and I want you to engage so I know what you like, where you're getting results, where you need help. This is my way of getting back. I mean, people say, well, why did you start doing that? And it's a really good question, considering I should really be up in the mountains. It's hot down here in Phoenix, and I'm committed to coming here every 2 weeks to do my videos. But this is why. When I get on an airplane, I don't love flying, but when I get on an airplane and I take off and I think, gosh, if this is like my last minute to go, and I kind of inventory my life, my number one question had always been, what have I done to give back for how successful I've become? And that's when I said, I've got to share my research. I've got to share my insight. You know, if I just impact one person's life, then this is worthwhile. And just from even the emails and the feedback we've gotten to date, it's unbelievable. But what I want to do is I just want to be able to give back. And I want to know that if something happened to me, my time's up and I'm leaving this world, I want to know that I gave insight and information of the research that I have spent my entire life accumulating to really figure out what the formula of success is so that you can apply it in your life. So again, please subscribe if you want to, and then please comment, and then you can get one of my Millionaire Insider mugs. I want to know what you're doing, where you're getting results, how you're using this material. It's so important to me. And then for today's show notes and resources, you can go to millionaireseries.com/105. For all show notes, go to millionaireseries.com/MI. And again, this training is sponsored by my very own Mindset Mastery training. You can go to millionaireseries.com/mindset to access that training. So thank you so much, my friends, for joining me for how to elevate your worth barometer so that you can achieve wealth, health, and happiness. I'm telling you, the worth barometer was such a game changer for me. And now, for over a decade, I have run one of the most successful performance masterminds in the world. And do you know, like 97.6% of the time, people share their results. And it was like, well, what was the biggest impact on your life? What strategy did you use? How did you execute? And they'll say, it was elevating my worth barometer. That's how powerful it is. And I just feel so honored and so blessed not only to do the research that I've done and the advising to learn this, but then to be able to actually have a practice where I can actually see it on a daily basis. Right now, we're going through a pandemic, and it was fascinating. When the pandemic first hit, I was getting emails from people who were just freaking out. And some of them are my big producers. And it was fascinating. Oh my gosh, this is a problem. Oh my gosh, this. And literally, I had to go, guys, wake up. What's going on? And you can't even imagine the results these mostly advisors are getting. It's just like new account after new account after new account. And some of the ones that are obviously have been successful said, you know, if I had not had training on the worth barometer, I don't know where I'd be. And that's where I want you to be. It is a game changer. So again, thank you so much for attending. This is Annette Bau, host of the Millionaire Insider. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye now.